While it is extremely important to overcome prejudice out in society, first and foremost, prejudice is enforced and perpetuated from within our individual bodies. Change starts from within. Within our brains, the thalamus works as a conduit of our sense perception. As the brain is receiving many signals from without that are processed through the thalamus, at the same time the brain is projecting far more expectation and understanding on the signals coming in through it. We each have a conceptual worldview, shaped by our personal history and culture, that will literally limit what we see. Even before our particular worldview becomes conscious in our minds, prejudice often works unconsciously in our bodies outside of our awareness. Your social knowledge of groups and people becomes ingrained in your memory that will influence your thoughts. The anterior temporal lobe is a major source of this semantic memory. It is highly involved in our implicit bias and stereotypes. Unconscious prejudice often stems from an unhindered amygdala. The amygdala is a part of the brain responsible for the detection and response to threats. If we have personal histories of prejudice against particular types of people that invoke fear, anger, or aggression, the amygdala can trigger the body into a fight or flight stress response, starting within milliseconds and before our conscious awareness. Through repeated negative associations, the amygdala acts on early sensory input, often unconsciously, linking it with emotional threat or reward. If we're not grounded, the amygdala can prevent us from utilizing our prefrontal cortex. Another area of the brain, the nucleus accumbens, also known as the brain's reward center, helps habitualize rewards. When groups reinforce prejudiced attitudes and behaviors, the nucleus accumbens can help us feel rewarded in our sense of belonging. People can feel the reward of belonging even as they might demonize outsiders of their group. When the brain's reward system of the nucleus accumbens is hijacked by prejudice, the pain of others can actually feel pleasurable. It takes each one of us to make the world a better place. The following are some excellent ways to overcome prejudice. 1. Body awareness. Being able to recognize when your body starts to go into the stress response can help you overcome unconscious activation of your amygdala. Interoception is the skill of understanding what is going on within our bodies. Making it a habit to continually be aware of our bodies will help us stay calm, keep access to our prefrontal cortex, and stop the stress response of fear or anger that is often unconsciously activated. 2. Diaphragmatic breathing. One of the best practices to trigger the calming, peaceful activation of your vagus nerve is diaphragmatic breathing. If you catch yourself starting to feel angry or afraid in a situation because of prejudice, take a moment to pause, quiet your mind, and breathe in and out deeply several times using your diaphragm. This will stimulate your vagus nerve, which helps calm your body, lower your heart rate, and break the stress response. Breaking free from a reactive stress response will give you access to your prefrontal cortex. If you have time, give yourself several minutes to breathe deeply in a quiet space to collect yourself. 3. Mindfulness. Experiencing prejudice such as ableism, ageism, classicism, nationalism, racism, sexism, or any of the isms can cause us to feel angry. And if we are called out for being prejudiced, it might invoke feelings of shame or fragility. We can get stuck in reactivity unless we are mindful of our body's responses. In their book, The Wise Advocate, Art Kleiner, Jeffrey Schwartz, and Josie Thompson detail how the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex is the brain's deliberative self-referencing center. The dorsomedial prefrontal cortex is the upper middle area of the prefrontal cortex. Deliberative self-referencing is to listen to our inner voice of wisdom. This inner voice is known by many names, such as your conscience, inner light, moral compass, or the wise advocate. Christians understand this inner voice to be a gift of the Holy Spirit. It can also be known as your true self or your core identity. Within Judaism, it can be connected to the still small voice of God that spoke to Elijah. Buddhists might associate it with mindful awareness. From a secular viewpoint, it could be perceived as the judgment of future generations, or a conception of yourself that is more mature and lovingly looking back on you from the future, giving you guidance. What is important to remember is that cultivating this part of your mind leads to similar benefits, no matter what you consider the source to be. The dorsomedial prefrontal cortex is activated through focus on something that transcends egocentrism and strict self-interest. Surrendering to a higher conception of ourselves will help us understand where our reactions come from and what has to change. The dorsomedial prefrontal cortex is strengthened and activated when we mentalize what others are thinking and what they might do. Rather than being reactive to others, we can be more mindful of our thoughts, watching them as if from a third-person perspective to break free from anger and anxiety. One of the most simple and straightforward definitions of mindfulness is the capacity to have a third-person perspective on your first-person experience. Habitually drawing your attention to a third-person perspective on your first-person experiences will strengthen your mindfulness over time. As you continually think about what you are thinking about and pay attention to what you are paying attention to, you will become more self-aware, less reactive, and able to break free from mindless automatic thoughts and feelings. Breaking free from reactivity through mindfulness will help us listen to our inner voice of wisdom, calling us toward more truth, love, justice, and forgiveness. 4. Cultivate shared hopes and dreams. At the center of most ethical systems is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love and forgiveness are also central to most systems of faith and philosophy. Breaking free from reactivity can help us offer basic dignity to anyone that we meet, no matter how different they might be. Being mindful will help us remain peaceful. Simply not getting agitated with another person will help prevent the unconscious activation of their amygdala and stress response. As we hope for peace and rapport with others, so too can we help put others at peace. Your lateral prefrontal cortex is highly involved in future-oriented perspective and long-term goals. These are your most meaningful hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Your lateral prefrontal cortex is also known as your executive center because it is involved in your working memory, awareness, and inhibition. Continually focusing on your hopes and dreams, especially as they coincide with the hopes and dreams of others, will help you strengthen your prefrontal cortex. Where there's been pain, heartache, and despair, we can think with a win-win mentality, relabeling and refocusing our attention to help see where our reactions come from and what has to change. We can forgive ourselves and forgive others to help break cycles of revenge. We can make a new world out of this old world if we cultivate shared hopes of love, justice, and truth. 5. The habit of being anti-prejudice. To overcome prejudice in both ourselves and in others, it takes continual habit. Destructive habits of prejudice can both feel good and right if we get stuck in an unconscious habit loop. Through the brain's reward center of the nucleus accumbens, destructive habits of prejudice can tend to feel true even if they are completely wrong. When embedded in automatic habit, it can literally feel better to think deceptive brain messages than to be drawn to the truth. Our habits work in 3 parts: a cue, routine, and reward. When we start doing things, they start to become automatic, like tying our shoes or riding a bike. Your brain is wired to make things easier for you. The problem is that our habits can get stuck and hard to change. But if we can isolate the cue, routine, and reward, we can break free from our automatic habit cycles. If you find that there is a consistent routine where someone is unkind to you, or perhaps you are being routinely unkind, it can be an opportunity to reframe the habit. Rather than being reactively angry or afraid with someone we have had a consistent negative routine with, being aware of our feelings can cue us to reframe the situation toward connection and the reward of overcoming disconnection, and prejudice. We can change our routine to get to know others more. Getting to know people through open-ended questions can help you better know your shared hopes and dreams. With more knowledge, we can overcome assumptions and ignorance. Building rapport and trust with others can help us find common ground in our shared humanity. With respect and kindness, we can tear down walls and appeal to each other's inner voice of wisdom. When our goals and intentions for others are motivated in kindness, our brains reward us with the same feelings of kindness that we hope for others. If we can isolate the cues, routines, and rewards to offer love, joy, and peace, we will feel the riches of all these feelings coursing through ourselves even as we extend it to others. And instead of expecting dramatic change in yourself or others overnight, we can celebrate small rewards every day, even if a situation only gets 1% better every day. Each of those small changes compound over time into enormous change. So the next time you start to feel reactive, responses of anger and fear, take time to breathe, slow down, and ask what you are being called to do by your inner voice of wisdom. Make it a habit to be mindful, observe your thoughts, and be intentionally self-reflective, and it will bring your inner voice of wisdom into sharper clarity and make it a habitual presence for your life. When we are at peace in ourselves, we have the strength to engage others in peace. We can ask people about themselves, to find out about our shared hopes and dreams. Each of us yearns for dignity and respect, so we can start from there. And as you repeat this cycle again and again, you will habitually and automatically help overcome prejudice from inside yourself out into the world.